In the debut episode of The Conscious Entrepreneur, I talk with Julie Flippen, who is so incredible. She's a business mentor. She's got a background in therapy. I first met Julie several years ago at a conference called Transform, and I've been just completely blown away by her work ever since. In this interview, we talk about sales, why people are afraid of it, how to overcome that fear. We talk about mindset, including how to listen to that still small voice inside of yourself. And we even talk about how you can avoid becoming a victim of a charismatic leader or getting stuck in a cult or something like that. If you don't know me, my name is Michael Mapes. I help conscious entrepreneurs market so that they can get more clients and make more money, live their vision, and ultimately help more people, which is what it's all about. So I don't want to take any more of your time. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Julie Flippen, and I'll see you on
Welcome to the very first episode of the Conscious Entrepreneur Show. I'm super excited to be here with my fabulous guest, Julie Flippen, who I will introduce you in just a moment. The reason that I wanted to do this show and the reason that I do, when I do anything, I have three intentions. So the first intention is that I want to build trust, let you get to know me, let you get to know my guest. I want to deliver value. We talk about value propositions. I think of invaluable propositions. How can we do something that's way above valuable? And then, of course, I want to help you grow your business, whether that's through a mindset shift, whether that's through a strategy, and whatever that looks like for you. If that's getting another client, if that's getting 10 more clients, if that's getting your time back, if that's finding your passion again, like whatever that is for you, so that you can continue to help people and also really live your vision. So let me introduce Julie Flippen because I don't want to waste time talking about me. I want to talk to our fabulous guest here. So I first met Julie, I think I want to say 2013, maybe at a conference that we were both at. And she just kind of blew me away from the beginning. She's got such a dynamic energy. She has such experience. What you'll see, she's been an executive. She has experience as a psychotherapist. She's a fantastic business coach, really no nonsense, which I need and I appreciate. And she's the author of several books, most recently True Quest, Finding Spiritual Gifts Through Grief, which I have bookmarked on Amazon to buy right after this. And I'm so irritated with myself. I didn't read it before this. And I'm excited to kind of jump in and ask you some questions about that. And I've also seen the evolution of you and the new challenges that you take on and the ways that you continue to show up and really be true to who you are and reveal who you are. So let's dive right in. And I want to just ask you, first off, what is it that you've learned about, business over all of this time? And then just a little bit of your story and how you got here.
Okay, something simple to start, Michael.
There you go.
Before I say that, I want to say that when I met you, I was also blown away, and reconnecting with you has been absolutely amazing. So,
Thank you.
in case I don't say that as we go along. Yeah. And so, business it takes so much courage to be an entrepreneur. I think we're called. I think it's just, this is our journey. We're given everything we need, and it's our place to grow, become more, expand, be inspired, and serve in our own unique way. Now, the biggest thing for me around business, and I say everything always is going to culminate in the sales conversation or enrollment or however you perceive it. The time you spent learning what you do, your experience, your marketing strategies, getting up on stage, like just facing all these new things, your money beliefs, your confidence, trusting your intuition, wanting to be authentic. Everything culminates in the sales conversation. Everything we do is to have an opportunity to talk to someone that we feel we might be able to serve. And everything you believe about yourself, your confidence, your ability to deliver your product or service, your pricing, your money beliefs, it's all going to show up right there. I think for me, and a lot of the business work I have done, I spend more time training in sales than in any other area. And I love it. That's it. Because if you can't show up, then you're not really going to get clients. And I think we're quite savvy these days. Collective consciousness has changed, where not only do we read energy, but we're aware that we read energy. And so in that conversation, if your energy shifts, especially when you start talking about money and an offer, people feel it. And that will show up as a lack of trust for them. So
Yeah,
that's the key.
I'm so happy to see that entering the more mainstream psychological and philosophical discussion. Like I came across a book a couple years ago called The Transmission of Affect, and it's started out as a dissertation and it's theorizing all of these things. Like how is it that,
Yeah.
like what's going on when we walk into a room and like it feels creepy,
Yes.
or we walk into a room and you can tell two people just had an argument. There's nothing in saying they may be masking on their face quite well. There's something going on in the environment, in the interaction. So it's kind of, it is entering, I think, in a different way. Let me just follow up on that question because um, it's like so many people that I deal with, it's almost like rather than like gearing everything toward what you said, which is like looking at, oh my gosh, I have an opportunity to be in conversation with these people. It's almost like all of the marketing and everything they do is like, how can I get away from having that do you know what I mean? Or from what I think
Yes.
of as sales. And I'm wondering where you kind of think that comes from, or what, or even just the impact that has on people when you have, I think there's just an energetic thing when you're creating something that's really about welcoming people in and doing something for people versus I'm trying to avoid at some level connecting with you or to make it what I perceive will be easier.
Well, it comes down to self-worth, doesn't it? I mean, we've been called to serve in a certain way. For us, it's entrepreneurs. And everything comes down to self-worth. The reason people avoid having the conversations or can't show up fully is, I mean, they're afraid of what you're going to think of them. Or if they say no, that's the rejection. That's the trigger from past rejections and things like that. I don't think I have talked to hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs. I don't think I've ever talked to one that did not have some kind of upbringing trauma in their background that they have worked through to be able to stand on the other side. Honestly, I think it's like a prerequisite to be an entrepreneur or something. And so the core work we've done on ourselves to be able to have the confidence to really show up and have a meaningful conversation with you, whether you want to work with me or not, is the key. And there's these little tentacles and aspects that show up that we still get triggered by. And so the more I fall in love with me and all my imperfections, thank goodness for them, the easier it is for me to be with you. And if
Yeah.
I'm afraid you're going to see something in me or judge me, or I'm going to start trying to dodge you energetically, and that's going to create a distance.
Yeah, I love that way of thinking of it. I've kind of recently been thinking about, this kind of shift from sales as being something we do to someone or something, you know what I mean? As
I
something we do
do.
for someone
Yes.
and with somebody. And I think it's just for so many people, the interesting thing about that is that if they can really step into like an embodied way of just showing up for these people, then it's like that's also when you get to do the work. You know what I mean? That's
Yes.
also when you get to make, some kind of a difference. And I noticed this even when I was reading through your website, because I always like to think that um, whatever I put out there for free, even if it's like the sales copy on the sales page or something, I'd like to think that that's giving people more than some people's paid programs do. And one of the things I
Yeah.
noticed about your website is you click on this, little link to set up a schedule or an appointment with you or something, and there's like 4 questions on there, and I'm like, if you, I was like, do I want to read these? This might be confronting. But it's like even if you just read those questions and think about them, you know, um, you're going to get something from that, that's before you even set up a time to talk with Julie. Just, you know,
Yeah, it's are you committed? I love working with people that are really they're committed. And I love the way you opened. You had three intentions. And I really appreciate that because that's the energy that we're bringing everywhere we go. And I have one intention when I come into a sales conversation, and that's that we both will receive value. It's not about if we are a great fit and this is going to work. It's, I believe every person I have a conversation with, my intention is that they receive value from that. And
yeah,
so I listen differently. I'm asking different questions. I'm interested. I'm not trying to get somewhere. I'm trying to be fully engaged in that conversation to determine, does this feel like a good fit? Because everyone doesn't. And
yeah,
I'm not afraid to challenge someone in a conversation or take a stand for them if they're afraid. And
yeah,
it it's tricky. It's tricky because of maybe some of the old ways sales has been perceived and things like
yeah.
that.
Totally. One of the stories that I've told quite a lot, but when I launched my group program many years back now, and you know, I'd been doing pretty well, and I had built up a private client base and all of this kind of stuff. And I thought, oh, I'll do this group program. I got 22 no's in a row, which had, I mean, nothing even close to that had happened to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
I went to a session with the woman who was coaching me at the time, Deborah Larson, and she said to me, she goes, go back to the last time that you got a sale. What were you thinking about? What did it feel like? And I was like, you know, it just felt really organic. It felt really easy. It felt like all I had to do was show up for this person. She goes, now,
Yeah.
what's been going on in these last 22 conversations? I was like, well, I've kind of been showing up like trying to fill my program. And she's like, well,
Right.
what kind of person are people going to want to work with? You know, and then I just sat there irritated because she was right for a while and didn't say anything. And, you know, then
Exactly.
3 months later, my program totally sold out. It was just, but I think that's such an important like thing.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, one of the things that we've talked about before, and one of the things that you wrote in your email to me was sales as an inside game. And I think we think of it as like, again, I need to know exactly the right thing to say at exactly the
Mm-hmm.
right moment. And I need to have exactly the right like logistics and if I must know everything. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and it's such a different thing. So what do you mean by that when you say it's an inside game? Break that down a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So as I was saying, like how I show up energetically. And let me just say, as we talked about a little bit earlier, now that we are more aware of energy, collective consciousness has shifted. I'm more open than I've ever been in my life. I'm more connected to whatever that source is, however anyone might define that. And therefore, I'm getting information. And so when I show up in a sales conversation, I want to be open. I want to hear, I want to intuitively know maybe a great question or someone's avoiding something over here, something like that. If I don't have the confidence, if I'm afraid I'm going to be rejected, if I'm worried about money, if I'm coming from desperation, if I haven't cleared and done the inner work, how can I? Because I'm going to be trying to avoid things in that conversation. And so it's an inside job because I think all of the work I do within, all the releasing the, you know, we say negative beliefs, but some of the ways I've lived and been afraid, the more I'm able to be fully present with with a client, with a prospective client. But we have to do the inner work. I mean, being a psychotherapist, that's all I did. That's what we did. We shifted, we released, we looked at how is it showing up? Because how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be any different in my business than I am in my personal life, right?
Absolutely. And I think I always tell people like, you know, if you want to know like what's not working in some area of your life, you can really probably just look to a single day and how
Exactly.
you're starting your morning, how you're prioritizing your tasks, how you feel as you go about it, like the people, with the kind of support that you have that you're able to reach out to. Because, like usually for me, like the first time I really, really got this it was like the first time that I needed to give a client a refund, and it was quite a large amount. And
Mm.
and that was like not the right fit, and it probably wasn't the right fit from the beginning. And my reaction to things up until that point had been to shut down. I'm going to lie on the couch. I'm going to not think about it. I don't think I can deal with this. And I just thought, well, what would someone who had a $10 million business do right now? They wouldn't be concerned about a $5,000 refund. They would
Right.
deal with it, handle it. They'd have systems in place. They'd go get another client. Like there'd be all kinds of ways that they'd be dealing with that. And so I think sometimes it's like, how can you bring that into the way that you're showing up now?
Yeah.
I think it's what creates the conditions for more wealth and more abundance to come in. Like, not is a situation great, but what's available for me to be great in this situation, and what's available for me to
Yes.
be different in this situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really, I mean, we sell the way we buy. We show up based on who we think we are. And as I step more authentically into who I am and really have the one word we haven't talked about is trust. Trust that if this doesn't work, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's learn from it next and that type of thing. And I I love talking about the sales conversation because that's when I get to talk about you.
Yeah.
Everything you believe, everything that you do, what needs to shift. And it shows up. Look at your bank account. And so I think all the other strategies are really important. Tuning in, listening to your intuition. I think we have some experts that are amazing. I continue to educate myself. I continue to do courses. I continue to grow and change. I'm 71. I turned 71 this year, and I'm as excited about all of that as I ever have been. I don't have quite the same energy all the time, but I
Yeah,
have.
as I said to someone recently, 40 is not 20. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, okay. Putting that into perspective.
yeah.
And so continuing to do all that and grow and being willing, like there's no shame in seeing something new about myself or understanding something. It's like today, because I've done a lot of work on myself, and it's like, oh my gosh, I never realized that. And I know my whole life is going to change when I start to do some of the shifting but
Yeah.
work with the experts. And I think the other really important thing for me that I've learned in business is understand what you do not want to do and hire someone.
Yeah.
I'm not wasting my time in, for example, social media. I don't really want to learn how to do all the posting and this, that, and the other thing. I am so willing to hire someone that's an expert in that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know people are trying to save money, but it doesn't save money.
It doesn't. And you show up in this way that's so depleted. And one of the things about that is, and I always think this is like a Midwest thing, but maybe this is just like a worldwide thing where, at least in the Midwest, and, I'm almost entirely German, a little bit of Swiss, but, so work is essentially life in all ways. My grandma was telling me, recently how she used to wash the windows and the storm windows twice a year. And I'm just thinking, my God, how in the hell? But I think sometimes it's we get so much of our self-esteem from feeling like we can do everything or feeling like we can accomplish everything. And there's some kind of guilt if you're not doing absolutely everything. I always think sitting still is also doing something. But
yes. Oh, that's so true. I was talking to a client the other day, and she's a writing coach, and she does, some amazing work. And yet she felt guilty about hiring someone to look at the whole publishing end and how she was going to, her next book and things like that, because somehow she thought she should know how to do it. I also think it's a great way to avoid actually getting with clients, doing the sales calls, is
Yes.
doing all this. Oh, I'll just, and I need to learn this, and maybe what's my CRM program, and I need to, all the things. It's like, I want to do what I love. I'm interested in increasing my capacity to have more joy in my life and
Yes.
sustaining it. And there's no joy in some aspects of business.
Yes, agreed. I think, I always feel like great marketing comes out of something. It's not something that you can put on top of something. And even if
Love
you
that.
make something kind of glittery and frosted, like people don't stay around, you just don't, it's like you don't fool people
Love
for
it.
that long. And there's something in like the sense of it, I think. You need to
Mm,
know what your clients are, the way that they're talking about it and the way that they're thinking about it. And like all these other aspects that you get to tailor that is so natural once you've kind of talked and heard enough people in this, it becomes
yeah.
so obvious and it becomes truly about them. And I just, yeah, I have to honor so much what you're saying because the degree to which people will have shiny object syndrome, focus excessively on creating things, um,
Mhm.
again, and I just like to put it in perspective, I had a six-figure business with a 200-person email list and Google Docs, which costs nothing. And I think
Right.
maybe $15 a month to have eye contact or something like that. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
And it's so much better, I think, and then the revenue that I had, um, went to my education, went to coaching, went to support, it went to go, it's like that's where in the beginning, it's like it's so crucial, not only for the knowledge, but also for the confidence, I think. And
Yeah.
it's one of the things that I've always liked about you because I'm amazed by it. And I want to shift here a little bit into a
Sure.
discussion of something that I definitely deal with more as I get older, but that I think is really important to talk about in the context of LGBTQ people, in the context of being a woman, in the context of being Black or Asian or disabled, which is, and something that I do think that just a certain kind of man doesn't struggle with as much, perhaps, which is this idea of like imposter syndrome and who am I to be doing this? And do I have really anything to offer? And I think sometimes that can play into this as well. I'll give the example. I don't know if she'll resent me for this, but I'm talking to her later, so I'll mention it. But I'll give the example of my sister here, who is one of the most incredible human beings that you ever could meet. I mean, she's got a PhD in communication. She's sitting on city commissions. She's like a great dog mom. She's got a great relationship. She does amateur bodybuilding competitions. She's written this award-winning public speaking textbook that's being used by all these universities. And she's just this person who really totally blows me away. And we were having a conversation, several months ago. She's telling me about everything that she's doing. And then she's like, I'm so tired. I'm like, well, tell me like what's tiring you out. It was like, well, the house isn't quite as tidy as I want, and all of these emails need answered. And I'm like, I'm not getting off this call to you get an assistant right this very second. Get some help so that you can sustain what you're doing. And I think there is a level of kind of I think when you're like in one of these minority categories or you haven't sort of had all this access to power, there's this thing that kind of comes up in you about having it all and doing it all. And I'm just
Yeah.
interested if you can speak somewhat to that.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. There's something about giving ourselves permission to spend money in a way that makes sense. Because with your sister, for example, like get a housekeeper,
Yeah.
hire someone to clean your house. I did that once, and it was like the greatest gift I ever gave myself. I mean, I lived alone. Okay, I wasn't messy, but having someone come in and do that once a week. And so it comes back to worthiness and deservedness. We always cycle back to I deserve and I'm worthy to have that and to have an assistant, to have someone help me. And it doesn't make me less of who I am. It increases my capacity to be more of who I truly am because I wasn't called forward to do that. I
Yeah.
was called forward to do this. And so every single way I can get help in doing that. It's so funny. I don't know if you've ever done the five love languages.
Yes.
Okay.
I have.
My top love language is acts of service.
Yes, same. do,
Okay.
do something
Like,
for me to make my life easier. Yes.
yes, yes, yes. And I'm willing today to invest in that because I think that is me investing in me and my business.
Yeah,
And
and I
just
do feel
being
like
honest.
Yeah, and I feel like so much too. It's like that part of what we do spiritually is our inner work, and then part of what we do is kind of the collective work. And one of the things, and you see this in like recovery groups and trauma groups, and like I have a client Terry Bybee who has a business called Women Who Risk that kind of brings women together to talk about joyful risk because women
Mm,
take as many risks as men, but are perceived quite differently when they take those risks. And there's positive and negatives to that. It's not a black and white thing, but one of the things that I'm interested in that I hope that there's somewhat of a return of is just more, I guess you'd call it consciousness raising. There's
mhm,
just this power when people come together and contribute like who they are and see their experiences validated through the eyes of other people.
mhm. Oh, absolutely. And to your point, women, I mean, we weren't voting 200 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
we've come a long way. I see more and more women supporting women and building them and empowering and serving uh, that demographic. And I absolutely love it. And I'm sure in every way,
Yes.
yes, as you
Yes,
said.
and there's so many ways that in these structures that it's kind of built in for certain people because they've built the structure in the first place. So there's all kinds of ways. I think that like there's sort of like a male bonding thing that occurs. There's like a straight male bond. There's all these like structures that may be built in, and it's not to say those structures are bad or evil or wrong. It's to say that if you've been not in that conversation, you have to be slightly more conscious about finding those friendships and those groups and that
Oh,
support.
100%. Yeah. This is why I love community. And whether it's a business community, a personal community, however you're doing it, business in particular. I mean, we met in 2013 and we've had very personal conversations as well as business because I don't really see any difference in it.
Yeah.
And so these communities are really designed to help and support us in our personal and our business growth. I just see it the same. I don't see it as something different.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's really really key to find who are your people right now. Because as we know, as we grow and change and shift and evolve, there are people that fall away and there are new people that come, and our willingness to just allow all of that and find your community and support that community, which is, it doesn't mean selling to each other, it means supporting, building up, creating more trust. I'm going to say this and I'm probably going to get some backlash, but I think women are like, we're the hardest people on ourselves.
Yeah.
The way we judge each other and the way in the past that women have, what we've been taught. And this is where I love energetically how things are changing. It is more acceptable today, and we see this more in women. And I'm just going to say that because we have been more emotionally centered, we've been brought up a certain way to be more in touch with our emotions, that we are opening to some absolutely amazing gifts. The gift of intuition, the gift of sight, the gift of visioning, the gift of knowing. And as we continue to do that, and then with men, they are coming to, we want this equality. We don't want this anymore. We want
Totally.
this. But as we are more emotionally based and willing to open, I think men are too. Like, I don't know what your experience
Yes.
has been with that deep emotional place that it's like we come with it.
Totally.
And it's served us in such a spectacular way now.
Like it brings up two thoughts, one, which is that there's different ways of knowing. in things, and the objective and the scientific is important, and it can tell you how far the moon is from the earth, and it can tell you something, very measurable, and it can and give you any number of medications that might, like, it can do all of these interesting and powerful things, and it's one way of understanding the world. But that's not to say that the subjective or your own subjectivity, or that the intuitive, or that the emotional, or that, like, it's not to say that that's a lesser way of knowing. And there's been just such a prioritization of one at the expense of others. But the problem is,
Yes.
if you have just the objective with no heart, you have hyperlogic, and you have all of these bad outcomes, and you have no face behind the people that you're making policy for. And it's like the objective is not the best. Like, an objective, like, we don't watch a film and think, oh my God, how many minutes was this? And then I like films that are 53 and a half minutes, and you like it. We have the whole experience of the film that is something different. And so I think, at various points in history, there's been other ways of knowing, and many different cultural ways of knowing. So it brings up that thought. The other thing it brings up is the way in which patriarchy and racism and heterosexism also hurt men and white people and straight people. Like, this is all kind of keeping us in a sort of certain way of understanding, of relating to each other. And I think it's so powerful to have these other ways come in that challenge, some of that, and that bring people who do have the power on board. Like, sometimes people will ask me, well, Michael, what should we do for gay people? And I'm like, well, the thing is, if I knew, I probably would have gone about doing it. Like, what do you think you might do to make the world, slightly better, slightly easier? And everybody gets to be in the conversation is the thing.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you a very quick story that I was very inspired by for the generations that are coming. All right. My sister was taking her grandson, 10 years old, and his friends, they were going to play on, we live on a lake, and they have this big plaything out there, and they were all going to play, and she brought two of them, and the mother was bringing one of the boys, and she said to her grandson, well, how will I know, like, what does he look like? And he said, well, he's got dark hair. And she said, okay, well, tell the mother I'm wearing a floppy hat and this and that. And so my sister's watching and watching for this other boy to come, and she said she saw someone looking around. She went over and said, oh, are you here for, Caleb, my grandson? And it's like, she goes, yes, but everybody had floppy hats on. And so she got them all situated. But here's what she said to me: he was African American. Her grandson never said, like, he didn't see the color.
Yes.
He had dark hair. That's how he described this boy to my sister. And I could have cried. I am not kidding you. It didn't occur to him to say, he's African American, Grandma.
Yeah.
It's like, because he didn't see color.
Yeah.
And I thought, those are the generations that are coming. That's what we are modeling. Everything we do now, the way we hold energy, the way we see people and hold them and love them and honor them, that's what's coming in our next generations. And for that, we are responsible.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I love, I'm so amazed by young people, and I'm so turned off the kind of generational bickering or something that occurs, because it's sort of just like, there's all kinds of interesting things about being young. There's all kinds of different interesting developmental things about being at every other age. And there's enough crap on this planet that I'm like, let's argue about this as we all grab a shovel with one another and start doing something, about it.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. And one of the things that this is all relating back to in terms of the sales conversation, I think that you kind of sparked to me, is just like, so often we need to go to people like in the world and be like, what's your experience? What do you want? What's important to you? How do you think you might solve this? Is kind of like what we get a model in the sales conversation. Not like, I'm attached to some outcome for you, but what's the thing that you care about?
Yes. Absolutely.
And then seeing if we can support them in that in some way.
Do you know the greatest part of the sales conversation in my mind is really understanding what the person in front of me truly wants and helping them open that up and expand it and play with it. Like just to completely immerse themselves in the real desire. That's the most important part of a sales conversation, and how committed they feel to having that. Whether I'm talking to an individual or business owner, it doesn't matter. It's just different strategies. Once I understand that, and how often do people get to do that? Like just to sit and luxuriate, and this is where I feel called, and this is what would be possible for me, and this is what excites me about it, without someone saying, well, how's that going to work? Well, what would you have to do? Like not getting into the how, but just simply being in the energy of that versus where are you currently, so we can see what's the gap between it. But allowing people to just dream and to bathe in where their soul is calling them, ah, that's the gift. That's the gift of the sales conversation.
Love that. One of the things that you help people do as well in terms of marketing, and I think this is important because, and I'm certainly not meaning to sound like I'm anti-data here or something, but we like live in a very like data-driven, data kind of fetishizing world. The thing about that is data is fundamentally a measure of history and what has been and what has worked in the past. It's also
That's right.
not separate from the way that you're asking the questions to get that data. It's also not totally separate from the people who are gathering that data. It's not separate from the moment in time at which that data. And the example I always think of is this, is if you give somebody a survey that says, would you vote for a liberal first-term senator from Illinois with the middle name Hussein? They will say no. And then in the specific, they will vote for Barack Obama, right? Because one thing is sort of based on what we've done before and how we think about it. And then the other thing is a different point in time with a specific face. And yeah, I just think it's like so important to remember because like there's never been a you before. Actually incredible because the universe could have made a Xerox machine,
Yes.
but it
Love
didn't.
that.
And one of the things that you help people do is kind of figure out, because I was really like refreshed when you wrote this to me, like, what's the thing you like doing? Like, and in what way do you like doing it? And I'm wondering if you could just speak to that in terms of like selecting your marketing activities, because there's no shortage of ways you can do things, but like really being discerning around and discerning past the fear, like this is comfortable for me and this isn't, but really being discerning about what's like, you know, that kind of truly called way to show up. You could just speak to that.
Yeah, I love this is so we're all very unique. Every experience I've had has brought me here, everything I know. And then we decide to have our own business and we learn all about marketing and all of these wonderful things. And sometimes we tend to follow, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm not designed to do it that way. Some people love being online. It's tuning in and saying, how do I like to show up? And for me, it's in person. So I didn't want to do the typical marketing thing. I wanted to go and show up in person. I felt called to speak. And so that's the way I like to market. I had a six-figure business before I ever had a website, but I was connecting with people. I was going out in person, and I know COVID changed a lot of things, the way things are now. But it's really important is, yes, there's experts. I appreciate them. I appreciate all the information, but tune in. You're a very unique individual. How do you show up? What really, makes you excited and inspired and motivated? Is it being Facebook Lives? Is it being on Instagram? Is it writing and doing different articles for LinkedIn? Is it going to conferences? I never went to a conference that I didn't come away, and I would go all over North America, but I didn't come away with a private client.
Yeah.
Because that's how it's perfect for me. I love the connection. That's how I best connect.
part of how I think you can get at this as well is to look at like what are you saying in your marketing? Like what are the things that you say that you care about, and what are the things that you do really care about? And then
Yes,
are
yes,
you kind of showing up in a way that's like aligned to those things? Like if I say
yes,
that I really care about, people feeling connected and community, like am I showing up in ways that
yes,
build community? And am I showing up being a really valuable and contributing member of like, communities? So I think it's like,
yeah,
who am I? And then how am I really living that? Like, if I say I care about this and I mean
yes,
it, what would I do? Versus just, because so often there's just like, it's a time to kind of get honest with yourself, I think. And, you have to be willing, I think, to do that. But it's so rewarding because it builds all this resilience and it builds all this courage and it builds all this mental toughness. And like, yeah, I love when you wrote that to me. I want to ask you one more thing before I kind of ask about how people can connect with you and continue to learn from you. Um, but I want to ask you about one of the things that I'm slightly obsessed with. And yeah, I'm revealing some things about myself, just explaining why I am the way that I am. But one of the
please
ways that
do.
I'm a little obsessed with is kind of these cult documentaries and these kind of cult books. And one of the things that I do think with all of this information out there and with the low kind of barrier to entry is it's like, I'm just curious from your perspective, having really, the credentials in mental health, working with so many people, even your personal experience, like there are people who can take advantage of these kinds of things. And there are people who can sort of take advantage of you when you're vulnerable. And I'm interested, like for you, any tools that people can have to sort of like discern this is really something for me in a stretch. And this is kind of against who I am, cognitive dissonance, like a stretch versus a pain and a break. Because I do think there's a lot of like kind of very charismatic, very unthoughtful, and very sort of, people that are willing to take advantage of people. And all of us, it's like there have been studies that shows the cleverer you are, the more likely you are to be involved with one of these groups, not the less likely. And we all go through moments: divorce, loss, transition, money changes,
Absolutely.
financial, economic,
Yes.
disease, whatever, where we can be exceedingly vulnerable. I'm just wondering if you can give anybody any guidance or kind of tools of discernment to sort of know which is A and which is B here.
Yeah, that's, boy, it's a big topic and it's really, really important. And we're going to circle right back to the beginning of our conversation as who am I? Do I have confidence? Do I trust myself? Am I open? Is my intuition firing? When I feel like I'm desperate to get some sales and I've got to get this business going, and I'm almost willing to take advice from anyone, like, just tell me what to do, tell me what to do. And when I'm leaving myself out of the equation and learning how to tune in and listen and take 5 minutes or take a day or just step back. I know I'm 30 years clean and sober. And I mean, we've talked about that. But one of the
Yeah.
things I was taught, because I was like, okay, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that, is my sponsor would say to me, we have a 24, 48, and 72-hour rule. And if it's a small decision, it's 24 hours. You're not, no, you'll get back to them. You have to check your calendar. And the big decisions are 72 hours. So I started to play with that. And it's like, well, what difference did it make? But it gave me the opportunity to just stop and say, breathe. What does it really feel like? Closing my eyes, imagining, did it feel like, oh, I didn't really want to do that? Or did I get the feeling of a little ping like, ooh, that kind of felt exciting? And it's okay to ask to have two conversations with someone. I don't have to decide on the first conversation. I can say, can we talk a little bit more? Because I want to feel into it. And maybe that second conversation is going in with a different mindset. But
Yeah.
learning to trust your intuition, it's the key, Michael. I mean, we know this. If I'm going down a path and we're like, how long before I wake up and go, yeah, that probably was not the right path? How I've often said to people, Was at any time, was there a little red flag that came up that went, and always, if we backtrack, always there was the little red flag that I ignored because of the shiny object, this is what I need, this is what I just need to be me and tune in such a deep way. It's not, it's a learned thing. We're not taught to say, how do I feel? What does it feel like? Imagining myself in these situations. We're not taught that. And so we're taught to be here. What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Does it feel like I'm aligned with that? And that's like, there I am, my unique self again.
It's the
I'm not
evolution
for everyone.
I aspire to this, which is the evolution from the cosmic 2x4 to the gentle nudge. Which I think we talked about the last time that we talked. And yes,
yeah.
I would like to be back in the world listening to the gentle nudges, not the 2x4 spray painted. I told you so.
Oh my gosh!
At the end of the line.
We've all had those experiences, and I used to be like, I'd have to get hit, about 5 times before it's like, are you talking to me? Is this about me?
Yeah.
Not, is this about me? And I always say I get the source tap on the shoulder because I've had different businesses, and it's like they're successful, and it's like, are you kidding me? I spent all these years growing this, and you want me to go do something else? And I say you in the very large sense, but it's, do I trust that? There is that confidence. There is that, I know who I am. And when I show up in that way, people know it. They feel it.
Yeah. You hit on two things that I want to just highlight really quick that I think are so important for people. One is that when we're in that mode of neediness, which may be for all kinds of reasons that are legitimate and all kinds of understandable situations, that there's a book by Eric Fromm, Escape from Freedom, where he goes, into a lot of all of this. But it's that like authoritarians and dominating people in that situation can seem very attractive. You can see this in the business context, in the religious context. You can see this in the relationship context. I mean, some people know that, I've been a victim of a pretty abusive relationship. And one of the things that is like kind of gets into your mind is like, well, this person's just going to make the decisions. And there's a kind of a sort of like short-term dopamine relief for that. Like, I don't have to like worry about it. I don't have to. But the thing is, it doesn't work out, right? And it's sort of abdicating and displacing onto somebody else who's really not emotionally equipped to handle it. And it's sort of like, it's just kind of a way of like dealing with, in sort of a dysfunctional way, what's going on. So I think that is just such a good way of saying like how we become so hungry for things that are damaging to us when we kind of get disconnected from that like source that you're talking about.
100%.
And the second thing that you touched on, I think is so important, is there's a difference between like conflict and disagreement and abuse. And you can tell a lot by like, I have a lot of situations that I was raised in, that I experienced in my adult life, where you learn pretty quickly that like sharing what you actually feel or think is not going to be taken well. So you sort of like, you take that into adult life of, I can't be direct with someone, I can't be honest with someone, this person's not going to care, which builds all this resentment. And you can tell a lot from, it's easy for someone to like you or to say good things about you when you're doing what they want. But it's an important thing when you express what you want that might be in conflict or the opposite of what they want, and to see how they respond. Because we have to like we teach people whether or not it's safe for them to come to us. This doesn't mean you have to get it perfectly right or anything like that every single time. But it's like, if you go to someone and you express something like, hey, I really want to have a second call, and I want to, and you kind of talk through certain things. And it's like, how that person reacts to that and how you feel into their reaction to that has a lot to do with what that relationship is going to be like. And why I mentioned Escape from Freedom is because it talks about the difference between power and impotence. And impotence
Mm-hmm.
masquerades as power because it's
Mm-hmm.
dominating, and I've got these armies that
Mm-hmm.
I can send after you, and look how strong I am, and my
Yeah,
muscles, and I know all of this, and you don't. It's like somebody's up here and somebody's down here. That's a compensation for an inner sense of insecurity and weakness. And
absolutely.
what real power is forgiveness. It's Jesus and
Mm.
Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi. It's turning, it's like I
Yeah.
could react to this in a way, but I am
Yes.
taking all of that and choosing not to. Real power is owning the mistakes. Real power is continuing to evolve. And so I
Yeah.
think that it's such a good lens to be noticing when these things are happening and how people are reacting. So I just
Mm.
appreciate you bringing that into view for people.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Let's close here with if people are anything like me, or if they're conscious, then I am sure that they're going to want to learn and get more from you. I mentioned your book, which is available on Amazon, which I know that I'll be getting. But where can people kind of connect with you, learn more about you? If they want to take the next step with you, what's their kind of destination?
Yeah, they can go to my website. It's called thetruequest.com. Uh, Sign up. I love inspiration. So right now I'm doing some inspiring kind of writing. And there's opportunities. If they want to have a call with me, they just need to answer those 4 questions first. But they can set that up, and I'm always happy. I work with individuals and I work with entrepreneurs because I'm allowed to do both. Now I thought I
Yes.
always had to pick. I don't. I don't have to pick. I love it. And so yeah, uh, that
This is
would be
like
the best
Picasso
way.
learning to paint everyday objects so he can transcend the medium. This is where you are.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Okay, I love that. And I know you've got some other projects in the works, so I hope that you will come back again when those come out and when those are released.
I hope
And
so. Yeah.
truly, just from my heart, from my being to yours, I really value you. Thank you for showing up today
Mm.
and sharing.
Oh, and I value you, and I've loved our conversation. And I hope your audience and mine appreciate it as much as you and I have.